Hey everyone, tonight we're going far back, not just through history, but through time itself, to trace one of nature's most mysterious, graceful, and misunderstood creatures, the cat. Not the house cat sleeping on your windowsill, not the big cats stalking savannas and jungles today. We're talking about the full evolutionary journey, from the very first feline ancestor to the proud lions, silent snow leopards, mischievous domestic cats, and every shadow in between. So before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, only if you truly enjoy these deep dives into natural history, and drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from. So if you're ready, dim the lights, find a cozy spot, and join me on a journey through the entire evolutionary history of cats. Let's go back to a time right after the dinosaurs vanished, about 60 million years ago. The Earth is a lush, steamy greenhouse. The continents are still shifting. There are no cats, no dogs, no humans. But in the undergrowth of the Paleocene forests, small tree-dwelling creatures are taking their first cautious steps into a world ruled by giant birds, early mammals, and recovering ecosystems. Among them is a little-known group of mammals known as maiacids. They don't look like cats, not yet. More like a cross between a civet and a weasel, with long tails and flexible bodies. They live in the trees, hunt insects, eat eggs. But what matters is what's happening inside. Their brains, their teeth, their claws. Maiacids are the common ancestors of both cats and dogs. From this modest beginning, evolution will split them in two directions, one toward the ancestors of wolves, and the other toward the future of cats. By about 40 million years ago, the split becomes clearer. The early proto-cats belong to a new family, Feliformia, or cat-like carnivores. They still don't look quite like modern cats, but their skulls are getting shorter. Their claws are becoming sharper, and most importantly, they're specializing. They're not built for chasing. They're not built for fighting in packs. They're learning to hunt alone, silently, precisely, with short bursts of overwhelming speed. The cat playbook, stealth, ambush, independence, is already being written. And while early dogs evolved to run long distances in packs, the proto-cats are evolving to move like ghosts. Now fast forward to about 30 million years ago, during the Oligocene epoch. On the supercontinent of Laurasia, modern-day Eurasia and North America, nature is experimenting. From the feliform line comes a new animal, Proilarus. Its name means first cat. It's about the size of a domestic cat. Long, flexible spine, sharp teeth, semi-retractable claws. It climbs, it pounces, it kills with precision. It's not quite a modern cat, but it's getting very close. Proilarus is the first recognizable feline, a true predator built not for strength, but for finesse. And from this sleek little hunter, a dynasty will rise. Over the next 10 million years, Proailerus gives rise to another genus, Pseudoailerus. These cats spread across Europe, Asia, and eventually into North America. And now, something remarkable happens. The cat family begins to diversify. Some lines evolve larger bodies and bigger teeth. Others remain small and arboreal. Some stick to forests. Others begin to venture into open plains. Evolution is testing designs. By 20 million years ago, the feline family tree is splitting rapidly, leading toward two very different destinies. The modern cats we know today, like leopards, bobcats, and house cats, and the now extinct saber-toothed cats, a spectacular and terrifying branch of the feline legacy. But we'll get to them soon. For now, let's talk about what makes cats cats. They are solitary, they are territorial, they are hypercarnivores, meaning over 70% of their diet is meat, even today. They have forward-facing eyes for binocular vision, sensitive whiskers for navigating the dark retractable claws that stay razor sharp, specialized spine and shoulder joints for spring-loaded movement, and a brain finely tuned for stalking, memorizing, and ambushing. Even in their earliest forms, cats are optimized for a very specific role: the silent, solitary, surgical predator. And while other predators evolve strength or endurance, cats evolve patience. They wait, they watch, and then they pounce. Meanwhile, Earth keeps changing. The climate cools, continents shift, forests recede, grasslands expand. Some cat species retreat into the forests. Others step into the tall grass and adapt. The earliest members of the modern genus Panthera, the big cats, begin to appear around 6 to 10 million years ago. This includes the ancestors of lions, tigers, leopards, jaguars, and snow leopards. These are powerful, larger cats, some of them learning to roar thanks to an elastic hyoid bone in their throats. And they don't all remain solitary. Elsewhere, another quiet transformation is unfolding. In the shadows of human camps, in the granaries of the first cities, among the refuse of early civilization, a smaller, more adaptable cat is watching us, and soon it will walk into our homes and never leave. But that's a chapter for later, because before the rise of the house cat, before Egyptian temples and internet memes, cats were already masters of survival, and they're about to face one of their biggest tests yet. The ice ages are coming, and the saber-toothed giants are ready to rule. By the time the Earth enters its long descent into the Pleistocene ice ages, roughly 2.5 million years ago, cats are everywhere. They live in jungles, forests, grasslands, and high mountains. They have crossed land bridges into new continents. They have diversified into dozens of forms, from lynx-like cats to cheetah-like sprinters. But among them, one branch dominates the imagination, a branch known not for stealth or subtlety, but for sheer power. They are the Machaerodontini, the saber-tooths. To us, saber-toothed cat often means one species, Smilodon fatalis. But in truth, saber-toothed cats weren't just one animal. They were an entire subfamily of felines, with dozens of species over millions of years. Some were the size of cougars. Others were as massive as modern lions, but more heavily built. What united them was their signature weapon: two massive flattened canine teeth, sometimes over 11 inches long. These weren't just oversized fangs. They were tools evolved for a very specific job. Saber-tooths didn't just bite, they struck like executioners. Let's set the scene. It's North America, 1.5 million years ago. The landscape is wild, untamed, full of giant creatures. Mammoths, ground sloths, mastodons, giant bison, camels, giant short-faced bears. It's a continent of megafauna, and among them walks Smilodon, broad, low to the ground, shoulders rippling under a thick neck and stocky frame. Unlike modern cats, Smilodon couldn't run fast for long, but it didn't need to. It was built for ambush. It would get close, then explode in power. When it bit, it used strong neck muscles to drive its sabers into the soft throat or belly of its prey. A single precision kill. Smilodon wasn't the only saber-tooth. There was Homotherium, the scimitar-toothed cat. It had shorter, broader canines, longer limbs, and may have hunted in packs. It preferred cooler climates, roaming from Texas to Siberia. And unlike Smilodon, Homotherium seemed better adapted to distance. It may have pursued prey into exhaustion, something almost no cats do today. These were specialized predators, built for a world full of large, slow-moving herbivores. But that specialization came with a cost. Because the Ice Age didn't just bring cold, it brought change. Rapid cycles of warming and cooling, glacial advance and retreat, rising and falling sea levels, and at the end of the last glacial maximum, around 12,000 years ago, that change accelerated. Humans had arrived in the Americas. The climate was shifting fast, and megafauna were beginning to die out. Smilodon's prey, mammoths, giant sloths, massive bison, vanished, and with them went the saber-tooths. Why did Smilodon go extinct? Scientists still debate it. Some blame the loss of prey. Some point to human hunting pressure. Others cite climate instability and ecosystem collapse. The truth is likely a mix of all three. What matters is that Smilodon didn't adapt fast enough. It was a specialist in a world becoming generalist. And as nature always reminds us, adaptability is more powerful than strength. But not all cats vanished. While saber-tooths fell, a different branch of cats began to rise. Smaller, more flexible, less specialized. Among them, the ancestors of modern lions, early leopards, snow leopards, and a humble little species in the Middle East that would change everything. A solitary, desert-dwelling predator called Felis libica, the African wildcat. It looked like a tabby. It hunted small birds and rodents. It was shy, sleek, and unremarkable. But around 9,000 years ago, it did something no cat had done before. It walked into a human village and stayed. Let's pause for a moment. Saber-tooths were glorious. They ruled continents. But they were gone. Felis libica. It was a survivor. Where the saber-toothed cats had gone extinct, this little wildcat had learned to live alongside humans. Not by force, not by domestication, but through something subtler, mutual benefit. It hunted vermin in human granaries. Humans tolerated its presence, and over generations, that tolerance turned into trust. This is the moment cats began their journey into our homes. Unlike dogs, cats weren't domesticated for labor. They weren't bred for protection, or herding, or hunting with humans. They simply stuck around. Archaeological sites from Cyprus show domestic cats buried alongside humans over 9,000 years ago. In Egypt, cats were elevated to sacred status. They appear in tombs, scrolls, and sculptures. Killing a cat was punishable by death. But here's the strange part. The genetics of domestic cats and wild cats remain almost identical. Even today, your house cat shares 95% or more of its genome with its wild cousin. Domestication in cats was never about control. It was about coexistence. This makes cats unique among domesticated animals. They don't serve. They don't obey. They're not dependent. They choose to live with us. And if we disappeared tomorrow, most cats would be just fine. It's a reminder that in the story of survival, subtlety can be a strength. Where saber-tooths relied on brute force and dogs evolved alongside us socially, cats took a different path. They remained mysterious. They remained mostly solitary. And they waited. And now, as the Ice Age ends and human civilizations rise, cats are ready to go global. From Egyptian temples to Viking ships, from Roman villas to Buddhist monasteries, they will travel everywhere we go. But their essence, it stays the same. Whether it's a lion on the savannah or a cat on a pillow, the soul of the feline remains graceful, watchful, free. As humans rise, settle, and build civilizations, cats spread with us. And while the small, domestic cat quietly claims hearth and granary, parallel legacy unfolds in the wild. The big cats, tigers, lions, jaguars, leopards, and snow leopards begin to stake their claim as some of the most awe-inspiring predators on Earth. Each one evolves separately, shaped by geography, prey, and competition. Let's explore how each came to rule its realm. Tigers are the oldest of the big cats, genetically speaking, appearing in Asia around 2 to 3 million years ago. They evolve in dense forests and river valleys, using camouflage, patience, and solitary hunting strategies. A tiger isn't built for speed, it's built for stealth and strength. They strike from the shadows, often killing prey twice their size with a single crushing bite. Tigers expand across Asia, stretching from the cold forests of Siberia to the humid jungles of Sumatra. Each subspecies adapts to its environment. Bengal tigers in India, Siberian tigers in the Russian Far East, Sumatran tigers, small and agile South China tigers, now nearly extinct. Despite their immense power, tigers remain intensely solitary, mating only to mate and leaving behind kittens that must learn to survive alone. If tigers are kings of the forest, lions are rulers of the open plains. Lions evolved later, between 1 and 2 million years ago, and they bring a revolutionary trait to the feline world: social structure. Unlike other big cats, lions live in prides, family units that hunt, raise cubs, and defend territory together. This social system allows them to take down larger prey, like wildebeest and buffalo, and defend kills from hyenas and scavengers. Lions once roamed much of Europe, Asia, and Africa. Ancient lions even lived in Britain and northern India, but today they are mostly confined to sub-Saharan Africa, with a small population of Asiatic lions clinging to survival in India's Gir forest. Despite centuries of human reverence, lion statues, crests, and folklore, real lions are vulnerable. Their numbers are shrinking, their habitats shrinking faster. Even the kings of the savannah must now face a world reshaped by humans. Leopards are masters of adaptation. They don't grow as large as lions or tigers. They don't form prides, but they succeed by doing what cats do best: remaining invisible. Leopards are found across Africa and Asia, in deserts, forests, grasslands, even mountains. They hunt from trees. They drag kills up branches to avoid scavengers. They eat everything from antelope to insects. Their secret is flexibility, the ability to survive in changing, difficult landscapes. That same flexibility makes them one of the few big cats still thriving in human-dominated areas. You can find leopards on the outskirts of Mumbai, Cape Town, and Nairobi, living beside millions, rarely seen. They are the ghost cats, the survivors, the watchers in the dark. High in the Himalayas and Central Asian mountains, lives a cat most people never see, the snow leopard. It's not quite a leopard, not quite anything else, belonging to a unique branch of the big cat family. Snow leopards are built for cold, altitude, and silence. They have massive paws to walk across snow, long thick tails for balance and warmth, and nasal cavities adapted to thin air. They stalk wild goats and sheep on icy cliffs, often unseen even by those who track them. Snow leopards are mythic, elusive, and threatened by climate change, poaching, and habitat loss. They are symbols of wilderness, beauty balanced against fragility. Cross the Atlantic, and the only big cat of the Americas awaits, the jaguar. Jaguars are stocky, powerful hunters that roam the rainforests, swamps, and grasslands of Central and South America. Unlike most cats, jaguars love water. They swim across rivers. They stalk caiman. They crush turtle shells with jaws that are the strongest of any feline. In ancient cultures, Aztec, Maya, Inca, the jaguar was sacred, a bridge between life and death, a guardian of the spirit world. Today, their range is shrinking, their voice quieter, but in the heart of the Amazon, they still rule. While big cats dominated the wild, small cats were weaving their way into human society. Let's return to the house cat. By the time of ancient Egypt, cats were more than tolerated. They were worshipped. The goddess Bastet, protector of homes and fertility, was depicted with the head of a lioness or house cat. Killing a cat was punishable by death, and when a family cat died, households would shave their eyebrows in mourning. Cats were mummified, buried with offerings, and kept in temples. But their influence didn't end in Egypt. Cats were traded, gifted, and stolen across the Mediterranean. They arrived in Rome, where they were prized for controlling vermin. Roman legions may have carried them to Britain and Northern Europe. Later, cats boarded ships with Vikings, protecting grain from rodents. They appeared in China, where they were welcomed into Buddhist temples. By the Middle Ages, cats had reached nearly every corner of Eurasia. They were everywhere, yet still never fully domesticated. But not all history was kind. In medieval Europe, cats, especially black ones, became associated with witchcraft and paganism. They were hunted, burned, thrown from towers. Some historians even link the persecution of cats to the spread of the Black Plague, because fewer cats meant more rats. And yet, through fire and fear, cats endured. They returned to homes, barns, and marketplaces. They meowed at doors, curled on laps, watched mice by candlelight, and by the Renaissance, they began to recover their place as companions, muses, and hunters. Fast forward to the 19th and 20th centuries. With industrialization came the modern house cat. Selective breeding began. Cat shows emerged. New breeds like the Persian, Siamese, and Maine Coon were formalized. But unlike dogs, cats still retained their wild instincts. Most can survive alone. Many remain semi-feral, and their behavior is only lightly altered by breeding. Even today, most house cats are not fully domesticated. They exist in a strange space, neither wild nor tame. Not trained, but deeply bonded dependent, but only when they choose to be. They are animals that domesticated themselves and never gave up their independence. Big cats remain symbols of wilderness. House cats became icons of the home, but whether roaring or purring, hunting or napping, cats stayed true to their essence, silent, independent, perfectly designed, and through thousands of years of human history, they changed little and yet changed us. By the dawn of the 20th century, cats were fully embedded in human life. They prowled alleys, curled up in parlours, hunted in barns, and meowed at back doors across every continent but Antarctica. And yet, even after thousands of years, they remained somewhat mysterious. They didn't pull ploughs. They didn't herd sheep. They didn't obey orders. They had simply persisted by charm, by instinct, and by mastering the balance between wildness and trust. But now, in the modern world, cats would face new challenges and take on roles no ancient cat could have imagined. Wherever humans went, cats followed. They arrived on ships. They snuck through cargo. They were carried as gifts or stowaways, and in many cases, they escaped, or were abandoned, or simply wandered off, as cats often do. By the mid-20th century, feral cat populations had exploded in cities, suburbs, and islands around the globe. In some places, they formed massive colonies, loose social structures built around shared feeding areas, shelter, and food scraps. These cats hunted rats, pigeons, lizards, even rabbits. They lived in construction sites, alleys, train yards, and beachfront ruins. They were survivors, and in many places they thrived, but they also sparked controversy. On isolated islands like New Zealand, Hawaii, and Australia, feral cats devastated native wildlife. Birds that had never evolved to fear mammals were wiped out. Reptiles vanished. Insects disappeared. Conservationists began to see cats as invasive super predators. In Australia alone, feral cats are estimated to kill over 1 billion native animals every year. Programs to trap, neuter, relocate, or in some cases, eradicate feral cats became common. But the moral dilemma remains. They are animals we brought, animals we abandoned, and now, animals we struggle to live with. Some cities support TNR programs, trap, neuter, return, to stabilise feral colonies humanely. Others take more aggressive measures. The question echoes worldwide. What do we owe a species that exists between wild and tame? While feral cats stirred debates outside, domestic cats found a new home online. In the early 2000s, as the internet took over daily life, cats became one of its first icons. Photos of cats in odd places, videos of kittens talking, cats playing piano, falling off counters, chasing lasers. The rise of LOL cats and captions like "Icon has cheeseburger." By 2010, cats weren't just popular online. They were everywhere. YouTube, Reddit, TikTok, Instagram, memes like Grumpy Cat Keyboard, Cat Niam, and Cat Lil Bub, Colonel Meow. Each became a viral sensation, spreading cat faces across the globe. But why? Psychologists suggest it's because cats mirror us. They can be graceful or clumsy, aloof or affectionate, serious or absurd. They are relatable but alien, full of expression but hard to read. They remind us of quiet independence, and in a noisy world, that's soothing. Today, millions of people watch cats daily, on reels, shorts, stories, and live streams. We've gone from worshipping cats in temples to building entire channels around their daily routines. We dress them up. We track their health with smart collars. We use AI-powered litter boxes. In some homes, cats have better technology than humans. They've been turned into brands, characters, merchandise. And through all of this, they remain cats. Curious, selective, comfort-loving, unbothered. They have adapted to the digital world without changing their nature. In wealthier nations, cats are now spoiled like never before. There are luxury cat trees, designer food, subscription toy boxes, therapists and influencers, and social media managers for cats. Some cats have more followers than celebrities, but the global picture is more complicated. In many countries, millions of cats are still abandoned, unvaccinated, malnourished, killed in shelters due to overpopulation. The line between pampered pet and street survivor has never been wider, and it raises a deeper question. Have we truly accepted cats into our society, or are they still outsiders, just barely tolerated? Genetic studies show that domestic cats have changed very little in 9,000 years. They remain genetically close to Felis libica, their wild ancestor. They can still interbreed. They still know how to hunt. Most don't rely on humans to survive. In other words, we didn't really domesticate cats. They just decided to live with us. And that decision was mutual. We gave them warmth. They gave us presence. Not loyalty like dogs, not obedience, but something quieter, a shared space. We now stand at a crossroads. Cats are loved, yet controversial, cherished, yet overbred, protected, yet abandoned. Some groups push for stricter breeding laws. Others advocate for fully indoor lifestyles. Still more fight for the rights of feral colonies. Meanwhile, wildcats and big cats face their own battles: habitat loss, climate change, poaching, genetic bottlenecks. The snow leopard, the tiger, the Iberian lynx all teeter on the edge. Their fate tied to ours, just like always. Despite the noise of the modern age, notifications, schedules, pressure, cats remain unchanged. They nap in sunbeams. They perch by windows. They blink slowly at us in trust. And in doing so, they remind us to slow down, to watch, to breathe, to be still. Cats aren't just pets. They're teachers of presence, survivors of time, whispers of the wild in our quietest corners. After 60 million years, the cat remains. It has seen continents split, climates shift, and empires rise and fall. It has hunted in jungles, deserts, and mountains. It has crossed oceans, prowled ruins, and curled up beside our fires. And somehow, through it all, it has changed almost not at all. More than any other animal, the cat is a paradox. It is both wild and domestic, both a killer and a comfort, both a solitary creature and a companion. Tonight, we end our journey not in a laboratory or a forest, but in something harder to define: the idea of the cat. Because while we've explored its body, its behavior, and its history, there's still one more realm where cats have left their paw prints: our minds. From the beginning, cats have occupied a space between worlds. In Egypt, they were sacred. In Norse mythology, they pulled the chariot of the goddess Freyja. In Celtic legends, a great black cat, Cat Sith, was said to steal souls before burial. In Japan, the Maneki Neko, the beckoning cat, brings luck and prosperity. In Islam, cats are revered for their cleanliness and are allowed in mosques. But not all cat lore is kind. In medieval Europe, cats were accused of sorcery, linked to witches, burned in mass killings, feared as omens, and yet they endured. In every culture, cats became symbols of independence, of sensuality, of mystery, of death and resurrection. Even today, their movements feel otherworldly. Their gaze feels ancient. Cats are not just animals in our homes. They are archetypes in our imagination. What do cats teach us? Not to work harder, not to obey, not to fight, but to wait, to listen, to move only when movement matters. In a world that runs on urgency, cats remind us to pause, to do one thing at a time, to sleep when tired, to sharpen our tools and save our energy. A cat never rushes. A cat never forces. And yet, a cat gets where it's going. As we look forward, The question isn't whether cats will survive. They've done that for millennia. The question is, what kind of world will we leave them? Will there still be jungles for tigers, mountains for snow leopards, quiet alleys for feral cats, homes where the door is always cracked open? Cats are indicators. Where they thrive, nature thrives. Where they vanish, something deeper is wrong. They need us less than we need them. But if we can protect their world, we protect something of ourselves. Maybe right now, there's a cat at your feet, or watching you from the corner of the room. Maybe you're falling asleep to this video. They're purring close by. Or maybe you simply remember a cat who once curled up beside you, big or small, fierce or gentle. The cat is an animal that doesn't demand love, but somehow earns it. It doesn't speak often, but it's always understood. And it doesn't follow rules, but it always knows the way. Before we had house cats warming our laps or wild tigers haunting our stories, there was something simpler, yet just as mysterious. The true wildcats. These were the quiet survivors, the bridge between ancient felines and the cats we live with today. Unassuming, elusive, and rarely seen, yet vital to understanding how the modern cat came to be. In this chapter, we step into the shadowy edges of fields, forests, and deserts, where wildcats still roam, just out of reach. If the domestic cat has a living ancestor, it isn't a tiger or a leopard. It isn't even particularly large or fierce. It's a slender, tawny feline, barely larger than a rabbit. And it walks the dry grasslands of Africa like a ghost. This is the African wildcat, Felis libica. And it is, quite literally, the mother of all house cats. Around 9,000 years ago, as humans in the Fertile Crescent began farming grain, mice and rats followed, and behind them, in stealth and silence, came these desert-dwelling cats. But here's the twist. Humans didn't domesticate cats. The African wildcat domesticated itself. Unlike dogs, who were bred by humans for hunting, herding, and guarding, cats entered our world on their own terms. The friendliest, least fearful wildcats got closer to human settlements. They ate the rodents, ignored the people. The people, in turn, tolerated them and eventually welcomed them. Generation by generation, these bolder wildcats passed on their genes. They grew slightly more social. Their coats shifted subtly. Their behaviors adapted to proximity with humans. But make no mistake, even today, the African wildcat and the domestic cat are nearly identical in DNA. Your cat, curled on your windowsill, is just a few steps removed from this wild ancestor stalking mice in the moonlight. Now we move north into forests of oak and pine, where a different kind of wildcat makes its home. Broader in build, fluffier in coat, and more reclusive, the European wildcat, Felis sylvestris sylvestris, has haunted the woodlands of Europe for thousands of years. It didn't come to us. It didn't want to. Unlike its African cousin, this cat stayed wild. Today, the European wildcat is endangered in many regions. It's rare, difficult to spot, and often mistaken for a stray tabby. But DNA doesn't lie. This is a different branch. Older, wilder, less touched by human hands. The tragedy is that it now faces a quiet erosion. Through mating with domestic cats, the genetic purity of the European wildcat is fading, hybridized out of existence in some areas. Conservationists race to protect isolated populations, but in a world overflowing with feral cats, the line between wild and tame grows ever blurrier. Eastward, across deserts and steppe, a patchwork of wildcat species and subspecies unfolds. The Central Asian wildcat, found in the mountains and arid plains of Iran, Pakistan, and Turkmenistan. The Indian desert cat, a pale, wiry feline suited to hot, dry scrublands. The Chinese mountain cat, an elusive high-altitude species still barely understood. These cats have evolved to survive in extremes: baking heat, freezing cold, sparse prey. Human encroachment, like shadows, they persist. They don't roar. They don't gather in prides. They don't seek the spotlight, but they represent an evolutionary success story, resilience through silence. In today's world, domestic cats are everywhere, and where they roam freely, rural fields, towns, farms, they often meet their wild cousins, and sometimes they mate. The result is a growing number of hybrid offspring, part domestic, part wild. In Scotland, wildcat DNA is being lost due to interbreeding with feral house cats. In the Caucasus, hybrid kittens blur the line between native species and strays. Even in African and Central Asian regions, hybridization threatens the long-term genetic identity of wild cats. These cats look wild, but their DNA may be diluted. It poses a problem for conservationists. How do you preserve a species that looks normal on the outside, but is slowly fading from the inside? And should hybrids be considered a threat or a new evolutionary beginning? Though small and often overlooked, wildcats play crucial ecological roles. They control rodent populations. They balance local predator-prey dynamics. They serve as prey themselves for larger carnivores. When wildcats disappear, entire ecosystems shift. Rodent outbreaks increase, diseases spread. The delicate web of biodiversity begins to fray. And because they're solitary and shy, wildcats are often early warning signs of environmental disruption. Their decline says something deeper, that our world is losing its quiet places, its untamed corners, its whispers. Why don't we hear more about wildcats? Because they are experts in invisibility. They hunt at night, avoid confrontation, roam at the edges of human settlement, blend in perfectly with their surroundings. And unlike wolves or foxes, wildcats rarely attack livestock or threaten people. They leave few traces unless you're looking. But for those who do see them, there's something unforgettable about that fleeting glimpse. Two reflective eyes in the underbrush, a low silhouette crossing a distant ridge, a tail disappearing just as you raise your binoculars. In a world of concrete and noise, a wildcat sighting feels like a gift from the past. We often think of conservation as a battle for big species, elephants, whales, tigers, but the small, quiet animals are just as important. Wildcats are genetic bridges to our pets, indicators of ecological health, echoes of a time before cities, screens, and smog. They remind us of what the natural world once was and what it could still be. As you settle in for the night, imagine the world of the wildcat, a crisp breeze rustling dry leaves, the faint squeak of a mouse under brush, silent paws navigating moonlit earth, a hunter not in haste but in harmony. This is the rhythm the cat has always followed. Not the clock, not the calendar, but the ancient pulse of instinct and dusk. The cat has always been a quiet traveller, not strapped to a wagon like livestock, not carried like treasure, not herded, bred, or forced. Cats found their way by invitation, by opportunity, or by simply showing up. And over the last 2,000 years, they followed the great movements of human history, through empires, across oceans, onto maps they couldn't read. This is the story of how a desert-dwelling hunter from North Africa became a citizen of the world. It began with grain. As early civilizations, Egyptians, Phoenicians, Greeks, began transporting grain by sea, rodents followed the cargo, and right behind them, cats. Seafaring cultures quickly learned the value of these stowaways. They protected food, reduced disease, required little care, and asked for nothing but a dry corner and the occasional fishbone. By the time of the Roman Empire, cats were standard crew members on merchant vessels and warships alike. They weren't just tolerated, they were loved. The Roman legions didn't just bring swords and aqueducts, they brought animals. Dogs for war, horses for travel, and cats for mice. As Roman cities grew, so did grain storage, garbage piles, and rats. Cats quickly filled the urban niche, slinking along alleys, under market stalls, and around bathhouses. They were seen as protectors of the home, sacred in their silence. In mosaics and frescoes across Pompeii, Herculaneum, and North Africa, cats appear, leaping onto tables, sleeping by sandals, chasing rodents in the background of daily life. They weren't yet lap cats, but they were companions, quiet, independent, essential. In the Middle East, cats held a special status. In Islamic culture, cats were praised for their cleanliness and grace. It's said that the Prophet Muhammad allowed a cat to sleep on his robe, and rather than disturb it, he cut off the sleeve. Mosques often had cats roaming freely. Travelers shared food with them, and poets wrote of their stillness, their gaze, their presence. As trade routes like the Silk Road stretched across Asia, cats moved with caravans, riding on carts, slipping into inns, prowling spice shipments. They weren't just rat catchers anymore. They were becoming symbols. In China and Japan, cats were introduced around 500-700 CE, likely from India or Southeast Asia via maritime trade. And in these lands, they became beloved. In Tang Dynasty China, cats appeared in poetry and ink paintings. Elegant, quiet, curious, perfect muses for the contemplative mind. By the Heian period in Japan, cats were treasured in the imperial court. They were given names, described in letters, assigned roles in poetry anthologies. By the Edo period, cats had woven themselves into folklore, legends, and ukiyo-e art prints. They became watchers of the home, bringers of luck, shape-shifting spirits like the baker Neko or Neko Mata, playful companions of children and shopkeepers. The now iconic Maneki Neko, the beckoning cat, emerged during this time. A small figurine, paw raised, said to bring fortune and prosperity. From mouse hunter to merchant's talisman, the cat had crossed another threshold. But not everywhere was so welcoming. In medieval Europe, cats fell from grace. As Christianity spread, older animal traditions were discarded or demonized. Cats, once symbols of domestic protection, became associated with witches, the devil, and unholy knowledge. In some cities, mass burnings of cats were held as acts of purification. Superstition grew. To see a black cat cross your path was to invite misfortune, and yet they were still needed. Plagues were spreading. Rats carried fleas. Fleas carried death. Some historians argue that the Black Death was worsened by the widespread killing of cats. With fewer natural rodent predators, rats multiplied. Disease flourished. It was a bitter irony. The creature that could have helped was cast aside out of fear. As Europe emerged from the dark centuries, so did the cat. Artists and philosophers found new fascination with the feline. Leonardo da Vinci sketched them in motion. Monks in scriptoriums painted them into the margins of illuminated manuscripts. And wealthy households began keeping cats indoors again. Not just for pest control, but for pleasure. They lounged by fireplaces, slept beside ink pots, wandered between philosophy and poetry. The cat was coming into its own, no longer utility alone, but personality. In 18th and 19th century France and Britain, cats began to climb the social ladder. They were no longer creatures of alleys and farms. They became apartment companions, salon muses, painted in oils, posed in portraits. Writers like Charles Baudelaire and Théophile Gautier wrote rapturously of their cats. Victorian England fell for feline elegance. By 1871, the world's first cat show was held at the Crystal Palace in London. Breeds were named, standards were set, and a new era began, the age of selective breeding and pedigree. The idea of cat fancy had arrived. As British and French empires expanded, so too did the cat. From India to Australia, from the Americas to the Pacific Islands, cats were carried, often as pest control, but increasingly as pets. On sugar plantations, in colonial ports, in government buildings, even in prisons and lighthouses, and in many cases, cats slipped free. They formed feral populations, took over islands, changed ecosystems. Some became local legends, some became problems, but they were now everywhere. The cat had conquered the world. In literature, cats became more than just animals. They became symbols of resistance, individuality, and strange wisdom. From Kipling's The Cat That Walked By Himself to Poe's sinister stories, the cat embodied mystery. They appeared in children's books, fairy tales, political satire, magic, and science fiction. And by the 20th century, they were no longer simply following empire. They were part of its mythology, a silent thread that linked east to west, ancient to modern. By the time the 20th century dawned, the cat had already circled the globe. But where a cat lived and how it lived began to diverge sharply. There were still barn cats catching rats in the hayloft. But now, there were also apartment cats sleeping on silk cushions. And just like the humans they lived beside, cats were shaped by their environments. The urban cat and the rural cat may have shared an ancestor, but their lives couldn't have been more different. This is the story of how cities and countryside, war and invention shaped the behaviour, biology and bond of the modern domestic cat. For most of human history, cats lived close to the land. On farms, they kept barns free of rodents. On homesteads, they nested near kitchens and woodpiles. On fishing docks, they patrolled for scraps. These cats were mostly semi-feral. They came and went as they pleased. They might tolerate humans, but rarely depended on them fully. They learned to survive cold winters, to avoid predators like foxes and owls, to raise kittens in haylofts, old tyres, under porches. These were the working cats. They were lean, fast, cautious. They weren't pampered, but they were respected. And in many places, they still are. Even today, rural communities often support colonies of barn cats, feeding them just enough to keep them around, but never interfering too much. A good barn cat earns its keep. Meanwhile, the Industrial Revolution changed everything. Cities swelled, factories bloomed, and with them came garbage, grain stores, and, inevitably, rats. Once again, the cat found a new niche. Factories hired official cats. Rail stations had feline pest control. Markets welcomed strays that kept the corners clean. But something else began to happen. In the tight apartments of the working class and the sitting rooms of the middle class, the cat came indoors. Not just for mice, but for companionship. Cats became members of the household, fed from bowls, named, photographed, cared for. And so, over the 19th and 20th centuries, a new kind of cat emerged, the indoor cat. When photography took hold in the late 1800s, cats were already popular subjects. Photographers posed them in tiny outfits, seated them at miniature tables, and turned them into novelty postcards. This was the birth of the cat as entertainment. In early film reels, cats chased balls, rode dogs, and acted in vaudeville sketches. They were funny, unexpected, and expressive without words. Even silent film stars like Charlie Chaplin included cats in their routines. As cameras shrank and entered homes, cats became stars of home movies, long before the internet ever saw a GIF. As Victorian homes emphasized coziness and order, cats fit the look. They curled on velvet chairs, sunbathed in lace-curtained windows, matched the rhythm of domestic life. Women's magazines in the early 1900s featured stories of cat ownership. Cats were associated with gentility, calm, and good taste. They were also increasingly linked to women, particularly single women and widows, seen as quiet companions in a noisy world. In fiction and art, the cat became a symbol of feminine mystery, independence, inner life. And while this gendered image had downsides, it helped the cat find deeper emotional footing in the modern home. When World War I erupted, cats didn't stay behind. They served in trenches, bunkers, and ships. In damp, lice-ridden foxholes, cats killed rats, provided warmth, offered psychological comfort. Soldiers shared rations with them, named them, wrote home about them. Some trench cats became legends, travelling with entire units, surviving shell blasts, returning to families post-war. In World War II, the pattern repeated. British Navy ships famously had cats on board as official pest control and mascots. One such cat, Able Sea Cat Simon, served on the HMS Amethyst and received a medal for bravery during a 1949 siege. After battles, amidst rubble and silence, cats were often the first animals to return. They were signs of survival, of continuity in chaos. Until the mid-20th century, most cats were not breeds in the formal sense. They were just cats, tabbies, blacks, gingers, tuxedos. But as cat shows gained popularity, so did breed creation. Persian Siamese, Russian blues and British shorthairs became symbols of prestige and taste. Later came newer breeds: Sphinx, hairless; Maine Coon, giant and fluffy; Bengal, wild-looking; Ragdoll, limp and docile. Selective breeding shaped personality as much as appearance. Some breeds became ultra-affectionate, others aloof, quiet, or even dog-like. But with this came concerns about health, ethics, and overpopulation. Not all cats were lucky enough to be bred. Feral populations exploded, shelters overflowed, and a new era of cat welfare was born. In both cities and countryside, cats that weren't claimed became feral colonies. Unneutered, unvaccinated, and often unseen, these cats led short, harsh lives. Hit by cars, poisoned, euthanized, or simply vanished. But in the late 20th century, attitudes began to shift. Trap, neuter, return, TNR programs emerged. Rescue groups formed. People began advocating for cat rights, not just cat control. Even governments got involved, passing laws to protect community cats and support sterilization programs. The idea of the cat as a member of society, not a pest, took hold. And so we arrive at today. The modern house cat may never leave its home. It may have never seen a mouse. It may have a name, a birthday, an Instagram. It may wear a GPS collar, eat designer food, nap on memory foam. But in its heart, it is still the same. A watcher, a hunter, a creature of stillness and shadow. The indoor cat still chirps at birds, scratches invisible prey, stalks dust motes in the sunbeam. It is tamed, but not domesticated in the usual sense. It chooses its life, and for reasons we don't fully understand, it chooses us. At this point in our journey, we've followed cats across deserts, ships, empires, cities, and war zones. We've watched them evolve, adapt, and survive. But there's one frontier left to explore. It's not geographical, it's not historical, it's emotional. Because somewhere along the way, cats stopped being just companions, or mouses or symbols, and became something far deeper. They became mirrors, reflecting the silent parts of ourselves, the parts we don't always show, the parts we sometimes forget are even there. This is the story of how cats became our emotional co-pilots. Through grief, joy, solitude, neurodivergence, and healing. Let's begin with something we all know, but rarely articulate. There's a stillness around cats, a kind of hush that follows them. They don't demand. They don't bark, or pace, or fill the room with motion. Instead, they offer presence. They sit nearby without expectation. They blink slowly, inviting peace. They curl against your side, not always out of affection, but because your warmth matches their rhythm. And in doing so, they co-regulate us. Studies have shown that Petting a cat lowers cortisol levels, the stress hormone. The sound of a cat's purr can reduce blood pressure. Simply observing a cat's slow, relaxed behavior can calm the nervous system. In a noisy, overstimulated world, cats remind us how to be. Grief is a private country, and for many who walk through it, human company can be overwhelming. That's where cats come in. They don't say cheer up. They don't try to fix it. They don't leave when you're quiet for too long. They sit. And in their sitting, they say, "This moment is allowed." It's no coincidence that hospice centres, trauma therapists, and grief groups often include cats in their care. Their presence isn't just comforting, it's anchoring. For those who've lost a loved one or are navigating the weight of illness, a cat becomes a living thread, a quiet heartbeat that continues. For the elderly, the isolated, the housebound, cats are often lifelines. They bring routine, feeding, grooming, talking, touch when human touch is scarce, attention in a world that often overlooks the aged. One elderly woman in a care home described her cat as the only creature who knows I'm still here. Another, living alone after losing a spouse, said her cat was the reason I make coffee in the morning. In a society that often separates people by age, class, or ability, cats cross boundaries. They don't care about status. They don't judge. They respond to being. For those who experience the world differently, people with autism, ADHD, sensory processing differences, cats can be uniquely supportive. Unlike dogs, cats don't overwhelm with energy or noise. They respect space. They communicate softly, often non-verbally. For someone sensitive to touch or sound, a purring cat on the lap can be just enough comfort without overload. For children with social anxiety, cats offer interaction without pressure. They teach consent. You don't touch a cat without permission. Patience, observation, and for many neurodivergent people, the bond with a cat feels authentic, free of the confusing expectations often present in human relationships. Cats speak volumes without saying a word. A tail flick signals annoyance. A slow blink offers affection. A gentle headbutt is a greeting. They teach us to pay attention, to read subtleties, to slow down and notice. In this way, cats become emotional teachers, showing us how to listen without demanding, how to respond without overreacting, and in return, they ask only that we respect their boundaries. It's a kind of emotional contract. You see me, I see you. Let's exist together. Life changes. We move. We lose. We start over. In those times, between jobs, between homes, between relationships, cats become anchors. They are the one thing that didn't change. The presence that makes a new place feel like home. The creature who doesn't care that you failed today. They just want dinner and a nap. In this way, Cats quietly carry us through our most vulnerable moments. They walk beside us, not leading, not following, just being there. Throughout history, the cat has often appeared in the margins, not the main character, but nearby. This reflects their emotional role too. In the lives of the overlooked, refugees, wanderers, street dwellers, misfits, cats are common companions. In war-torn zones, feral cats become guardians of children. In homeless communities, cats share sleeping bags and food. In prisons, cats offer a kind of redemption, non-judgmental presence in a place often defined by shame. And even in hospitals, mental health clinics, and recovery centres, cats continue to provide what therapy sometimes can't: unconditional attention. But let's be honest, cats are not always nurturing. They scratch, they hide, they knock things over and wake us at 4 a.m. But that too is part of their value. They don't exist to serve us. They are their own beings, with moods, wants, boundaries. And in this way, they remind us that not all love is obedient. Not all comfort is soft. Sometimes, connection means navigating each other's limits and still showing up. Here's something to ponder as you drift towards sleep. Maybe your cat isn't just a companion. Maybe they're a mirror. They reflect how you deal with silence, how you respond to being ignored, whether you accept love when it comes without obligation. Maybe your cat shows you parts of yourself you didn't know were still alive. Softness, humor, curiosity, trust. And maybe, just maybe, that's what they've always done, even 9,000 years ago. As we reach the end of our journey through cat history, it's time to look forward. The world cats helped build is changing faster than ever. Technology, climate, urbanization, these forces reshape life for humans and animals alike. What does the future hold for cats? Will they continue to walk silently beside us? Or will new challenges and innovations change their place forever? Rising temperatures and shifting ecosystems are affecting wildcat populations worldwide. Forests are shrinking. Prey species are moving. Human-wildlife conflict increases. For species like the African wildcat, the ancestor of the domestic cat, this means new threats and opportunities. Conservationists work to protect habitats, create wildlife corridors, and reduce conflict. But domestic cats, often feral or free-roaming, also face dangers. Heat waves, disease outbreaks, food shortages. Communities are learning to balance cat welfare with ecosystem health, especially on islands where cats threaten native birds. From automated feeders to interactive laser toys, technology is reshaping cat care. Smart litter boxes, GPS trackers, health monitoring collars, robotic companions are emerging, sometimes replacing real cats for those who can't keep pets. Even AI-generated virtual cats appear in apps and games, offering companionship without fur or responsibility. But while tech offers convenience, it also raises questions. Can a robot ever replace a living, breathing cat? How does screen time compare to purring warmth? What will the human-cat bond look like in a digital age? Genetic research and cloning have entered the pet world. The first cloned cat, CC Copycat, was born in 2001. Since then, cloning services have appeared for wealthy owners wishing to bring back their pets. Selective breeding continues to shape new breeds, but sometimes at the cost of health. This raises ethical debates about animal welfare, genetic diversity, the nature of individuality, and life itself. Will future cats be genetically engineered for appearance, temperament, or health? Or will the wild, independent spirit of the cat resist such control? As more people live in dense cities, cats adapt or struggle. High-rise apartments offer different challenges than rural barns. Indoor-only cats live longer, healthier lives, but often lack outdoor stimulation. Meanwhile, feral cat colonies thrive in urban parks and alleys, but face hazards like traffic, disease, and poisoning. City planners and animal advocates debate how to manage feral populations humanely through TNR, sanctuaries, or other methods. The relationship between humans and cats continues to evolve in complex, sometimes fraught ways. Beyond domestic cats, wild relatives face extinction threats. The Iberian lynx, the Scottish wildcat, the Asiatic leopard cat, all descendants of ancient feline lines. Efforts to protect these species involve habitat restoration, breeding programs, and genetic star studies. In some cases, hybridization with domestic cats threatens wild gene pools. Scientists work to understand and protect the feline family tree, ensuring that wild cats don't vanish from the planet. Cats will continue to inspire art, literature, and myth. From anime to memes, they hold a special place in human creativity. They remind us of mystery, independence, and grace. As global communication connects us all, new cat stories, traditional and digital, will emerge. He-cat-human relationship is one of the oldest and most enduring partnerships on Earth. It has survived ice ages, empires, plagues, and revolutions. It has crossed oceans, continents, and centuries. And as we look to the future, one thing remains clear. The cat is not just a pet. It is a living thread, a creature who quietly walks beside us through the ages, teaching us about survival, independence, and connection. The story is far from over. Thank you for traveling this incredible journey through cat history. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please like, subscribe, and share your own cat stories in the comments. Good night, and may your dreams be filled with gentle paws and quiet purrs.